course, leads to the fact that he did not complete his course of studies at the London University. For all his facility for verse and music at this stage of his life, Rabindranath's emergence as a real poet, in his own reckoning, was yet to come. The true inspiration came suddenly, without warning. He was living in a house in South Calcutta with brother Jyotirindranath and his wife Kadambari Devi. He was later to describe the experience in his own words.
One day, while I stood watching at early dawn, the sun sending out its rays from behind the trees, I suddenly felt as if some ancient mist had in a moment lifted from my sight, and the morning light on the face of the world revealed an inner radiance of joy. The invisible screen of the commonplace was removed from all things and all men, and their ultimate significance was intensified in my mind. And this is the definition of beauty. The poem I wrote on the first day of my surprise was named The Awakening of the Waterfall.
When father took over the management of the estates at Maharshi's instance, we moved over to Shilaida, a small village on the bank of the Padma in the district of Nadia.
Rabindranath had married Mrinalini Devi in 1884. Maharshi's instructions to look after the family estates had arrived 2 months earlier. Rabindranath went to Shilaida 7 years later.
At Shilaida, we lived an entirely different life, away from all contact with society and completely confined to ourselves.
The rural surroundings, the wide expanse of the great Padma, the contact with simple village folk, all had a remarkably invigorating effect on the poet.
Father's output of writing was perhaps at its maximum during the years spent at Shilaida.
আদিকে ময়ূরের মতো নাচে রে হৃদয়, নাচে রে হৃদয়, নাচে রে শতবরণের ভাব উচ্ছ্বাস কলাপের মতো করেছে বিকাশ, আকুল পরাণ আকাশে চাহিয়াই উল্লাসে কারে যাচে রে হৃদয় আমার, নাচে রে আদিকে ময়ূরের মতো নাচে রে।
My father had become greatly concerned about our education. He was determined that we should not go through the grind of the stereotyped school teaching prevalent in our country, his own impression of the schools in Calcutta having left a bitter impression on his mind.
The school of Shantiniketan came up on a plot of land acquired by Rabindranath in 1862. Among the noblest of his ideals, it was not an easy task to bring it into being. Personal belongings, as well as the copyright of his books, had to go. Neither pupils nor teachers were easy to come by. But Rabindranath was not prepared to give up, for he realized that most problems of the country could be solved if the basic one of education could be tackled. In the midst of all these came personal bereavement. His wife Mrinalini Devi and second daughter Renuka died within a year of the opening of the institution. 4 years later, youngest son Shomi passed away. But his eldest son Rathindranath remembers,
vicissitudes of life, pain or afflictions never upset the equanimity of my father's mind. His inward peace was not disturbed by any calamity, however painful. Some superhuman Shakti gave him the power to resist and rise above misfortune of the most painful nature. After mother's death, father devoted himself with renewed zeal to the affairs of the school at Shantiniketan.
The conception of the open-air educational institution at Shantiniketan, apart from being a healthy scheme, had behind it the vision of a poet. This poetic vision was to guide most of his undertakings, whether literary, social, or political. When Lord Curzon suggested the division of Bengal, it was the humanist poet in Rabindranath who was moved to write a series of magnificent patriotic songs. It was also he who suggested the exchange of bands of friendship between Hindus and Muslims.
Vande Mataram! Vande Mataram!
And when the Swadeshi movement took a turn towards violence, it was the poet whose sensibility was hurt and who withdrew from the political field. It was Rabindranath's own translations of some of his lyrics that paved the way to world fame. Gitanjali, which came out in 1912, had an introduction by the poet Yeats. Translation had given the poems a new garb, and yet they had a beauty of their own. Sybil Thorndike was one of many who were deeply moved by the poems.
My songs are like water plants. They do not stay immovable where they were born. They have no roots, only flowers and leaves. With the joy of light they dance in the waves. Having neither home nor wealth, they are like unknown guests. No one knows when they come or go. When the July rains come pouring down from the clouds and submerge the banks, my water plants, turbulent and restless, lose their way in the flood and are carried away in all directions from country to far country.
Professor Basham's reaction as a youth to Tagore's poetry provides a clue to the phenomenal popularity Rabindranath acquired in Europe.
Like many thoughtful adolescents the world over, I was then going through a period of inner crisis, seeking for some kind of psychological security in a world which presented baffling problems to me and which seemed dangerous and unfriendly. At that time, Rabindranath's poetry, read of course in the poet's own English translations, was of great help to me. His vision of nature in the light of the spirit, his affirmation of the fundamental goodness of the world, the deep sense of love and brotherhood expressed in his poems, all helped me to come to grips with the problems of my age. And I think the poems had a real effect on the formation of my personality.
Gitanjali brought Rabindranath the Nobel Prize in 1913. In 1915, he was given a knighthood. 4 years later, he was forced to renounce it as a result of political upheaval which revealed to him more clearly than ever the callousness of British rule. If his scathing condemnation of the massacre at Amritsar did not actually alter the course of imperialist policy, it certainly gave a wonderful boost to the ebbing morale of his countrymen.
Two hours before he arrived at the great aula of the Berlin University, it was absolutely packed to suffocation. And Tagore, with his 4 or 5 companions, just could not enter. So I remember the famous Professor Harnack, the great theologian, liberal theologian. He stood up with his hands raised and said, I asked for 5 or 6 volunteers who would walk out with me from the hall so as to make room for Tagore. It was a very noble gesture, and he did walk out with 5 or 6 volunteers, and then Tagore could enter. So packed was the hall.
What happened in Berlin was typical of every meeting Rabindranath addressed in every city in Europe and the Far East that he visited on his tours in the 1920s. The dominant theme of his lectures was the need for intellectual cooperation between nations. To him, it was the only way to world peace. He also spoke of his school, his country, and its heritage. And he said, "I don't want adulation, I want love."
Many have rightly pointed out his premonitory and prophetic feeling in regard to the cyclic wars and retaliative misery that have visited our times and our age. And he did speak out against the spirit of war and violence. He did so in Japan, he did so in India. He toured all over this country and Europe on the eve of the First World War and after it was over. And in between the wars, he was trying to give the message of some forms of international worship and work together, which would dissolve the hardness of our hearts and make for a true fellowship of minds, not an identification of religions, not a kind of false unification of cultures, but a real encounter by creative spirits of different countries and cultures.